Have you ever been reading the Old Testament and just stumbled across a law that makes you stop and go, wait, what? Some of them seem just, well, brutal and kind of bizarre. We're about to dive into one of the absolute strangest, a law about a killer ox and what its public execution can tell us about justice, symbolism, and even a nation's destiny. Okay, let's get into it.
I mean, it's a really good question, right? You'd think, okay, if an animal is dangerous, you just put it down. But this law is different. It demanded a formal public execution by stoning. So what on earth is really going on here? To figure that out, we have to look at the law itself.
So there it is, right out of Exodus. The ox gets stoned to death, just like a human criminal would be for a major crime. And get this, its meat, which would normally be perfectly fine to eat, is now totally forbidden. You see, this isn't just a practical rule, it's a ritual. And according to the theologian James Jordan, that is our first huge clue that this law is about something much, much bigger than a farm animal.
Okay, so first up, the principle of rebellion. Now this is where we have to shift our thinking a little bit. Jordan argues that if you're only thinking about public safety, you're going to miss the whole point. You have to think about the divinely established order of the world.
Think about it like this. In the biblical worldview, God put humanity in charge of the animal kingdom. We were given dominion. So when a domestic animal, an animal that's supposed to be serving humanity, turns around and kills a person, it's not just an accident. It's seen as this profound violation, an act of rebellion. It's literally an insurrection against the created order and the image of God in mankind. So the key takeaway here is that this ox is committing a crime that is symbolically just as serious as high treason against God. And through that act of rebellion, the ox is fundamentally changed. It goes from being a clean animal to an unclean one. Its flesh becomes forbidden because it now represents a fall from grace, a creature that is sided with chaos and death.
All right, but the law doesn't just stop with the animal. Not at all. It has some really serious and escalating consequences for the owner. And this reveals another whole layer of what's going on here, both legally and morally.
So check this out. The law makes this incredibly important distinction. On one hand, if a normally tame ox just suddenly goes wild and kills someone, the owner is considered blameless. I mean, they still lose their ox, which is a big financial hit, but that's it. But on the other hand, if that ox was a known troublemaker, the text says it was apt to gore in the past, and the owner had been warned but did nothing to lock it up, well, now the owner shares in the guilt, and they could literally face the death penalty themselves. That is a huge escalation.
Now, here's a fascinating legal twist. Because the owner's crime was one of negligence, not, direct premeditated murder, the law provided a potential way out. If the victim's family agreed, they could demand a ransom, a payment, to spare the owner's life. And the law seems to imply the family could demand whatever amount they wanted. Talk about a powerful incentive to keep your dangerous animals properly restrained.
Okay, so we get the literal law, right? A rebellious animal and a potentially negligent owner. But what if it's not just about a literal ox? What if there's a key that unlocks a much deeper symbolic meaning? This is where we go from the barnyard to the cosmos.
To really get what Jordan is saying, we have to wrap our heads around this idea of biblical symbolism. In his view, the Old Testament is just packed with these things. Animals, in particular, are almost never just animals. They're living pictures or images that are telling us a deeper story about people.
And this, right here, is the big leap. This is the key. If animals can be symbols for people, then a really powerful animal, like an ox or a bull, can be a symbol for a powerful group of people, like, say, an entire nation. As soon as you accept that premise, this whole Goring Ox law just explodes with new meaning.
All right, this is it. We've put all the pieces on the board. We've got a rebellious beast, a negligent owner, and this wild idea of animals as national symbols. Now, we put them all together and see if we can solve the mystery.
So this is the big question, isn't it? If this law isn't just about some random ox, but is actually a prophecy about a specific nation that would rebel against its master and do something terrible, who are we talking about? And there it is. According to James Jordan's interpretation, the Goring Ox is a symbolic picture of the nation of Israel itself, a nation that was supposed to serve God, its true owner, but which, in this view, becomes a rebellious and dangerous beast.
Okay, let's break this down, because this is where everything connects. Jordan links this ancient law directly to the events of the New Testament. He sees those rebellious goring bulls as a symbol for the powerful forces within Israel that rejected and ultimately killed Jesus. And in this symbolic drama,
Jesus takes on the role of the most vulnerable victim mentioned back in that law, a slave. And then comes the final, chilling detail. What was the exact price set in the law for compensation if a known dangerous ox gored a slave to death? 30 shekels of silver, the very same price paid to Judas to betray Christ. For an interpreter like Jordan, this is no coincidence. This is the symbolic fulfillment of the Goring Ox law, confirming, in his mind, Israel's role as that rebellious beast. So, when you look at it this way, this law transforms. It goes from being an ancient, dusty rule for farmers into this incredibly rich, symbolic prophecy, a theological drama playing out across the centuries. It really forces you to ask, what other meanings might be hiding in plain sight in these ancient texts, just waiting to be unlocked if we learn to read them in a different way?